everyone, this is your host Vaishnavi, and you are here at RadioNyra's podcast series 2 with Brown Immigration. Again, we have Rishi Oja and Kelsey Berger. Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Well, how are you?
Good.
Doing well.
Happy to be
Doing
here.
well.
Wonderful. So last time we spoke about H1B visas, and this is our second podcast. So we're gonna talk about EB5, which is I think every Indian community member wants to know what is EB5 and what's the timeline, and
Sure.
how is it going to be useful? Is it only for the millennials or is it for everybody?
Sure.
So let's start off our podcast, and we want to know about like the people who are hearing about EB5 visa for the first time, or the people who know already but they don't have the clarity on what exactly it's going to help Indian
Yep.
community. So yeah, let's get started. So we start with what's EB5 visa.
Sure. So an EB5 is it's called the $1 Million Investor, and essentially it's designed to create jobs. It's an employment creation visa, and it leads directly to a green card. And so an EB5 essentially has two parts. The first part is that the person that's applying has to invest the required amount of money, and that could be either $1,050,000, or it could be $800,000 in certain circumstances. And as a result of that investment, they've been able to create 10 full-time jobs for U.S. workers in the United States. And that if you can meet that criteria, it will lead to a green card. Depending on how we're applying, there's different processing times. Some of them take a long time to get adjudicated, like maybe 5 or 6 years. Other types of EB5s go very quickly in the context of, could take maybe about a year and a half to get done.
Why do you think now it's getting so popular in Indians?
Well, the big thing is that the backlog, right? So it takes Indian citizens. There's two basic ways of getting a green card. There's work and there's family. On the family side, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, if your parents are U.S. citizens, or if you have kids in the United States or brothers and sisters, those people can file for you, but oftentimes people don't have family relationships that allows them to apply for a green card. So they look at work-based options. The challenge with work-based options is that when the rules were written back in the mid-1990s, Congress didn't think about the fact that a lot of people from India want to be able to come to the United States.
Right.
And so what they did is they put a cap on the number of green cards that can be issued per country in a given year. And that cap is 7% of visas, which comes out to be like 11, 10,000 visas per year, which is not a very big number. And so what's happened is that those 10,000 get issued and more come in, to the point where India and China are the only countries that have a backlog.
Correct.
And the backlog for China is 3 or 4 years. The backlog for India and EB2 and EB3 circumstances is like 13 years, 14 years. So somebody from India that's let's say they're a software programmer is working in a cubicle, and the person right beside them is from Nepal, and they do the exact same job, and they get paid the exact same amount. The person from Nepal is going to get their green card in like 3 years. The person from India is going to get their green card in 13 years.
Wow.
And so what happens is that people start looking at, well, what are the other options in terms of how can I get my green card faster? And one of them is an EB5, which just gets you to a green card faster than the traditional route of you just have a employer sponsor you.
Okay, so many people invest in like temporary visas. So do you think that EB5 would definitely get people green card? And what are the benefits if they apply for EB5? And is it only for their family, or who are members? What are the family members' criteria over here?
Like any other type of permanent type of visa, it would be for the person who's going to be benefiting, so like the employee, the investor, and then their immediate family, so spouse, children who are under 21, but it wouldn't be like everybody's cousins or the entire family. They haven't made
your parents aren't included or anything like that.
They haven't included them yet.
Okay.
But the investor, that's nice for folks who have the money and have the funds, and again, like Rishi was saying, who want to get here a little bit faster than the decade-long wait that they would have otherwise.
Right. Okay. And it's like an immediate family members and the parents. That's what.
Parents don't count, right? So,
Oh, okay.
if I'm applying for an EB5, I would be, the people included on my application are going to be my spouse
Mhm.
and any kids that I have that are not married that are under the age of 21.
Okay,
That's
so it's important for people who are applying for their family. The children should be under 21.
They got to be under 21.
Under 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about if they're about 21? They
Then
don't get it.
They're adults and they have
Okay.
to qualify on their own for their own EB5 or whatnot.
Okay. As I said, is it only for the millennials or the people who are here with the H1B and other
Sure.
visas? Do you think what kind of investment amount, if we talk about what kind of investment is required to apply for EB5?
Right. So generally, the EB5 requires $1,050,000 generally, unless it's going to be in a rural area or a really low income area, or low employment area. Then we can bump it down to 800,000. Still significant, but at least you have a little bit of a difference.
And the investment amounts are really tied to those kind of specifics that Kelsey was talking about. So a rural area is an investment of $800,000 in an area that has less than 20,000 people living there.
Okay.
So we're talking about relatively small places.
Mm-hmm.
And then additionally, it's what's called a target employment area, which is an area that has 1.5 times the national unemployment rate.
Okay.
You can invest in those places, and you can there's the different websites will provide information as to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an offset, right? You don't have to invest nearly as much. But the challenge is that you have to be able to create 10 full-time jobs for a business in an area that doesn't have a lot of people.
Right.
And you got to be able to sustain that business, because simply investing the money, creating the jobs, you got to be able to hold the jobs, because what immigration is going to do is they're going to say, all right, we're going to give you a green card.
Right.
That green card's only good for 2 years.
Hmm.
After that 2 years is done, we're going to come back to you, and you have to come back and prove that, one, you made the investment,
Oh yeah.
and two, that those 10 jobs that you said you were going to create are still there. So you got to be able to hold the employment as well. So you really want to start thinking, I tell clients all the time, don't think about this as like an immigration problem.
Right.
You got to figure out whether or not this is a good business idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we'll have clients that come in and say, all right, I'm going to open a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
You can open a gas station with $1 million investment. What are you going to do with 10 people at the gas station?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Absolutely.
you're going to have one guy as a cashier, another guy maybe stocking the shelf, and you're going to have 8 people just sitting around doing nothing. You're going to have to pay them
Right.
for that entire period of time,
Mm-hmm.
so that you just don't get a 2-year green card. You want that 10-year green card.
Right.
And so you want to really think about this as it's a business problem of what's a good business idea,
Okay.
and then let the immigration stuff kind of flow around it.
Okay, so when we talk about the investment, everyone has where is this investment going into? Where are they investing? So you said the employment, they need to create an employment and they need to invest in such businesses. So what are those businesses you would suggest people can look for that,
Sure.
that they need to invest the money? Because it's just okay, EB5, a lot of people have this confusion that where is this money going in? Is it
Yep.
going to the government? Is it going to,
It's going to the
a particular
business, quite
firm,
honestly,
or
yeah.
what exactly?
It's going to the business. So when you're thinking about what kind of business is a good investment,
Right.
you got to first of all think about what kind of business needs 10 people working there,
Mhm.
right? And if I'm thinking off the top of my head, manufacturing, right? If I'm building something, I need people to be there to build it. A restaurant, right? You need cooks in the kitchen, you need wait staff, and you need a cashier, and those kind of, maitre d' or whatever that are going to be there. You need the kind of businesses that are actually going to need people to work there. An accounting practice probably doesn't need a lot of people because you're selling a service. You need an accountant and maybe a secretary and some people, but you don't need a lot of people to work at maybe a services company. So you really want to think about what kind of business am I going to need people
Mhm.
and be able to keep them there.
Okay.
And so that's going to be important. The other kind of EB5 there is what's called a regional center.
Okay.
And a regional center is kind of like, let's say for example that someone wants to build a hotel, right? A Hilton or a Marriott.
Mhm.
$1 million isn't going to build a Marriott,
Right.
right? A Marriott's going to be $400 million, right? They're going to be huge investments because you got to do all the permitting and building a whatever, however many stories it is or whatnot. So a regional center takes a lot of investors, maybe 200 investors or 300 investors, and everybody's putting in their $1 million.
Mhm.
Well, now I have $300 million. Now I can build my Marriott.
Right.
The nice thing about a regional center is that you don't have to prove that you've created 10 jobs.
Mhm.
The government's going to assume that you've created 10 jobs because it's such a big project.
Right.
The drawback with a regional center is that you put in your $1 million and you don't have a lot of say about what happens to it because other people are controlling that regional center.
Absolutely.
And so if that Marriott doesn't get built or there's problems with it or whatnot, you might not get your money back and you might not necessarily get your green card.
Okay.
So you got to do a lot of diligence and you got to do a lot of work up front to make sure that this is a good investment. These people are reliable, the people that are kind of managing the project, that they're not just going to take my $1 million and run off with it. I'm working on a case right now, which ironically just got resolved, where nice family, Indian family, they live out in like Kentucky, and they put in $1 million for a ski lodge in Vermont. And they don't know anything about skiing. They're like, oh, this is a good idea. This is a good investment. And that ski lodge is supposed to, they're building townhouses, and they're building like a concert hall, and they had like a food hall, and it's like a massive, massive project. And the people that were in charge of it started using people's money towards nice jewelry, nice vacations, a yacht, and all these kind of other things that had nothing to do with building a ski lodge. Well, what happened, the government came along and said, hey, we gave you a 2-year green card, but that 10-year green card, we're not going to give it to you. Because you can't prove that your money actually went towards building the ski lodge. How do we know that your $1 million wasn't used on a nice fancy vacation or fancy airplanes and things like that? So you got to really be careful about, if you're going the route of a regional center, you don't control the money. If you're putting $1 million into a restaurant, you're going to be able to control that restaurant because it's a smaller investment, right? You're going to have some say in terms of decision making. So that's the one thing that we're always cautious about in terms of advising people, that make sure you know what you're investing in. It can't just be, well, my cousin told me this is a good idea, so I'm going to do it. That can't be good enough.
Yeah. How about the non-profit organizations in US? Do you think that is also included in this, like investing in non-profit, either donations or something like that? Does that also count to invest?
It could, but again, you have to look at the 10 jobs that you're going to be creating with your investment. You can't just make a really nice $1 million donation to the nonprofit. There's a little bit more thought that has to go into it.
Okay. And is that investment should go from a person who is applying for EB5, or it can be your parents or somebody gifted that money and they can also apply EB5?
It's a good question because it depends on where the money's coming from.
Right.
So India actually has very interesting laws regarding gifting money. There's no taxes on gifts. So actually an EB5 that I worked on was a gentleman from Gujarat who invested in a hotel. And he was one of like 6 or 7 investors. He didn't have the $1 million himself. Okay. But his mom gave him $100,000, and his dad gave him $200,000, and his brother gave him $50,000. You had all these people kind of giving him money, and then his wife's parents gave her $250,000. And so we had this huge chart about where all this money came from, but none of that money was taxed.
Oh wow!
Whereas in the United States, if I give my sister $50,000, the government's going to take some money out of that because there's a gift tax.
Right.
So India had really interesting rules about that. Now the other thing that you have to do is, one, you have to show where that money came from.
Okay.
The thing the government's trying to protect against is people investing money from crime, right? Like drug dealers. Well, they have millions of dollars. How do they clean that money? Well, they invest in things.
Okay.
You got to show where this money came from.
The source of funds.
The source of the funds, right? I sold property, or I inherited this money, or I sold stock, or whatever it was. You got to be able to source all that money, and there has to be a paper trail of that money coming from wherever it's sourced from to the investment in the United States. Literally, you want to draw out a picture, and every line on that picture, you want to have a document that's attached to it.
Okay. And what are the documents, like when we are talking about documents? It's just that the source of funds to the investment is required, or there are a lot of documents required for, especially for these type of, then getting the pool of funds from other and putting in one basket. So how does that work?
I mean, in terms of sourcing, it's literally like a breadcrumb trail. You have to follow, where did this person who maybe added to the pool of funds, where did they get the money? So maybe it's tax returns or bank statements, something to show that this is where their money's coming from, and then we have to follow it, leave that account, go into maybe the investor's account. We have to show that now they have the money.
Okay.
It's still lawful, and that it's going to be invested later on.
What we don't want is $200,000 just popping into a bank account.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we have no way of figuring out like where did this come from? Oh,
Right.
my cousin gave me I lent him some money and he gave it back to me. Like that's just
Right.
not gonna be good enough.
Right.
You gotta be able to source everything.
And immigration too, to add on to that, I mean, we can tell them all we want to. Yes, the money's legit. Yes, the money was given by Uncle Fred and here it is. But if you can't show them, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
It's not what we say, it's what we can prove.
Right.
Right. And once the investment is done, say
Mhm.
any say it's for real estate or restaurants, do you think that money can be again like it will multiply, or will they get it, or if they don't get it, that doesn't matter, like that's not relevant for
Like when you
getting
get
their
like an investment
yeah,
back
like
or
a
like
return on
Yeah, is there a
investment. So
the challenge with EB5 is you can't guarantee you can't have a guaranteed return on investment. It's not allowed.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, everybody's kind of moving towards being able to make money, right? If I'm going to invest $1,050,000, I would like to see a return of $1.2 million or $1.3 million.
Mhm.
The challenge is that you can't say there's a guaranteed return on investment. Particularly, that happens with regional centers,
Right.
where regional centers should attract people.
Mhm.
They'll say, if you give us $1,050,000, we're going to guarantee a return of blah blah blah. They can't do that. It's
Right.
not lawful. But
Okay.
it's a lot easier to try to work towards a return on investment if you control it.
Mhm.
With a regional center, you just have to be confident that whatever this project is, I'm gonna get my money back, because otherwise you don't control it. You don't have a say in terms of getting my money out or things like that. Like oftentimes regional centers will have terms in their contracts that say you put in your money
Mhm.
and you might not be able to see a return for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and you just got to be okay with that.
Okay. And during applying for this EB5, when
Mhm.
they invest money and they say say something went wrong, maybe you would have got some case studies where they're ready for the investment, but the things didn't work. But the funds has been transferred already. So did you come across any such challenges, any cases, and then they don't get it because of maybe a lack of documents or a lack of the source of funds showing that where is it coming from? So, or lack of the timeline which they were supposed to submit something and
Yeah.
they didn't do it. So, any case study you want to share?
I mean, there's circumstances where whoever's constructing the filing doesn't do, to Kelsey's point, doesn't do a good job of showing the breadcrumb trail.
Mm-hmm.
We have to prove where every last nickel came from. And if you can't prove it, then immigration is just not going to take your word for it. They're not just going to say, hey, we believe that you're telling us the truth. They're going to say, you're asking for a benefit. If you're going to ask for this, you got to prove that you're eligible for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to show where that money came from. We have to show that this money was invested in this particular business. And we have to show the business took that money and created these 10 full-time jobs. And those jobs are still available and they're still being filled. So it's the challenge that you see with EB5s is usually the amount of paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough
Okay.
to be able to prove those criteria.
Mhm.
And if you can prove it, then generally speaking, they work. If you can't prove it, then it doesn't, and that's a really expensive risk to take.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is about risk. And what about the timelines? We talk about the people apply. So what's the duration, the time period to get approved or?
So it depends on how you apply.
Mhm.
So let's say you apply for your own small business.
Okay.
It's probably going to take about 4 to 5 years for you to get your green card, just based on the normal processing time that it takes immigration to give it to you. And when you get your green card, again, you have to hold those 10 jobs for another 2 years, because you're going to get a 2-year green card.
Okay.
And then you have to apply for your 10-year green card, which might take another 2 years to get.
Okay.
So that whole duration of time, you got to make sure that I've made my investment and I'm holding my 10 jobs. Which is why we tell people, don't look at this as an immigration issue. It's got to be a business decision that this business makes sense. It's going to be able to hold these 10 jobs, because we're talking about probably a 7-year runway
Mhm.
before you get your 10-year green card.
Okay.
That's for a standard $1,050,000 investment.
Okay.
Now, if you have a rural investment, which is in those small areas, or a high unemployment area investment, those process much, much faster,
Okay.
because immigration wants to get that money infused in those areas, and they want to encourage people to do that, to try to build jobs in these areas and grow these places. So those folks tend to get their green card maybe in like a year and a half, 2 years. They come much, much faster, which means that 2-year conditional period, you get it much faster, and you can hit that 2-year mark quicker, and you can get your green card quicker. So, there's good and bad with both, but certainly the rural, the regional centers, the high unemployment areas, you certainly get your green card much, much faster going that route.
Okay, are you saying like the screening happens even after 2 years and they see that the employment is active, and what if, say, there is a case where, say, for 2 years they maintain the employment and the business is running, but after 2 years, when the time comes for him or her to apply for like another 10 years of green card, but they see that there is no employment active, or maybe less than 10 employees, maybe 5 or 2 are active, but rest of them are not working or they're unemployed now, and the business is running low. So what happens to those people?
You don't get your 10-year green card.
Yeah, you're out of luck.
Oh my God, that's the biggest risk, I would say.
Yeah.
It is.
The other thing to remember is that it's an employment creation visa. So people will say, all right, well, this business already has 10 people. I'm going to put in my $1 million and I'm just going to keep these jobs. No.
Okay.
You got to go from those 10 people that are already working there. Now we need another 10 that you need to hire.
Oh.
So you got to create the jobs, not hold the jobs.
Okay.
Right? If I'm buying a restaurant and it already has 10 people working there, well, and if I want to get my green card, I need to have that restaurant have 20 jobs now.
Oh my God.
Right?
Okay.
So it's not a hold. It's not
It's not 10.
It's not just keeping them.
Increase
You gotta-
you just show the
creation.
scaling or the creation of
the creation.
Oh,
of
okay.
jobs.
Okay. Then how important is choosing the right regional centers? Because you were talking about regional centers. So how important is that, and how do they identify the right regional centers?
I mean, it's a challenge. A regional center is usually going to provide a pretty comprehensive explanation of the people that run it, their background, their expertise, how often they've done this before.
Okay.
And to a certain point, you want to have a sense about the project, right? If you're building a ski lodge in Vermont, all right, that makes sense. If you're building a ski lodge in Mobile, Alabama, or Tampa, Florida, you're gonna be like, something doesn't make sense here, right? If I want to build a beach hotel and it's in a affluent area in Orlando, all right, well that might make sense because it has a lot of people coming there to visit and things like that. So I mean, a little bit of this is sometimes people make really good business decisions that just don't work out. And that's just a risk of the EB5. But to the amount of diligence that you can do in terms of knowing the details of what's going to happen, having a sense as to the people that are running this project, that they have expertise and background in whatever they're going to do.
Yeah.
But a little bit of this it's always a leap of faith. Like, how do you know that? If you're going to heart surgery, how do you know that the surgeon's good? Right? Like, there's leap of faith of like, all right, well, I assume this person knows what they're doing.
Okay. Well, so is it only for people who are living outside of India, outside of US, can apply for EB5, or people who live in US, say they are on H1 or they are on L1, they can also apply for EB5? What does that structure? How does that structure work?
Absolutely, it's the same deal. None of the rules change whether you're inside of the United States or outside. The later process, once you kind of get to the green card stage, obtaining your green card, that might look a little different whether you're in the United States or outside. But for the most part, whether you're in or out doesn't make a difference.
Matter. Okay, right. They can apply, and the timeline remains same for people who are living here and people who are applying.
It's probably a little bit longer if you're outside the country. So the green card is really 2 steps.
Okay.
The first step is the EB5. Did I invest the money? Did I create the jobs? Once that's approved, then you go to step 2, which is what's called the adjustment of status. That converts somebody, if they're already in the United States, in H1B or L1 or whatever they are, that changes them into being a green card holder. And that's where immigration makes sure that you don't have any immigration violations, you never committed crimes, things like that, you haven't committed fraud. And that conversion takes place with them inside the United States while they're in H1B status. And once it's approved, you get your green card and you're no longer in H1B. If they're not in the country, that EB5 then goes to the U.S. consulate in Mumbai or Beijing or wherever they are abroad. And there, the consulate does kind of the same thing that immigration does in the United States. They're not going to let you in if you're a bank robber or if you're a terrorist or something like that.
Yeah.
The process of that EB5 going to the consulate generally it takes longer for it to get there compared to if somebody's already in the United States. So in the U.S. is a little bit faster because the EB5 and the adjustment of status are adjudicated by the same agency. Homeland Security does both of those.
Okay.
When you're going from an EB5 to the consulate, now you're dealing with two different agencies, Homeland Security and the Department of State, and there's just like a little bit of a delay. And quite frankly, consulates are slow. I mean, there's a gigantic backlog with consulates in terms of getting visa appointments. It just takes a while.
Right.
And that's just it's just a waiting game.
Okay. Like for people who are like on H1B and they are like almost like say they are here for the 3 years of employment bracket and then they see that okay they don't have a scope of leaving after 3 years so they need to go back to their country.
Yeah.
So do you think that in the last year when they are in H1B and working here in the last month also they can apply for EB5 and they can stay in US or they need to go back to their country?
The challenge with India is that again it's got two parts.
Yeah.
And there's the visa bulletin that comes out every month that tells you when you can file this application.
Oh.
Right? And so what the visa bulletin says is when you file an EB5, you get what's called a priority date. Let's say we file our EB5 today, and it's May 14, 2026.
Okay.
Right now, immigration is accepting the second step adjustment of status from Indian citizens from I think May of 2023. So what happens is there's about a delay of 3 years between when I file this and when I'm even eligible to just file this application. And that's for a standard filing. Now, if you're in one of those regional centers or a high unemployment area or a rural area, immigration says, all right, well, now you can file those at the same time.
Okay.
So depending on what kind of EB5 you're filing, you might be able to file those two things together and just stay here even if your H1B runs out. But if you have the standard, I'm going to invest in my own restaurant, there might be a delay between this and this step.
Okay.
Which means, all right, well, then if there's a delay and you can't file this, your H1B runs out, well, then this visa is going to have to go abroad and you're going to have to go to the consulate.
Okay. So a lot of time in immigration, we hear a term called concurrent filing. What does that mean?
That's when you file those two
This is
things
the
together.
concurrent
That's a
filing?
concurrent
Yes.
filing.
Oh, okay. All right. And about the people, the children who are studying in US, what about them? Like, how does this entire process work?
Well, same thing. If the children, if they're finishing up their schooling and they want to invest and do the $1 million, then it's going to be the same process for them. If their parents are doing it, then again, they would qualify as a dependent, a derivative on their application until they turn 21, get married, both. But otherwise, it's the same process.
Okay, and EB5 is like anybody can apply, like doctors, IT professionals, anyone? Is it for everybody? Like anyone can apply, or there is any restriction that people who are in this category of work they cannot apply, or that's not suitable for them?
Well, in EB5, the initial filing, anybody can do it. The question is when you get up here to the second step of the process, is everyone eligible to file for adjustment of status? And there's going to be some restrictions on, depending on, let's say, for example, you're a physician here, and you're here on what's called a J1 visa. J1s are very common for doctors.
Right.
A lot of J1 visas will have what's called a foreign residency requirement that says if you have a J1, you're a doctor, you can't file an adjustment of status unless you get the specific kind of waiver. So you have to get some kind of, it almost like J1's kind of put you in a box and you got to unlock that box in order to be able to file for an adjustment of status. So the EB5 itself, anybody can file that. It doesn't matter. But the question is, can you file an adjustment of status? That's the real question. So when you're looking at these, you say, all right, am I going to run into a problem? Not at step 1, but at step 2 of the process, and that's where we need to figure it out. And so step 1 is going to have your investor, any spouse, any kids under the age of 21, they're all going to be included on one application.
Okay.
When you get to the adjustment of status phase, everyone's going to need their own application.
Oh.
So husband's going to have one, wife's going to have one, kids are going to have their own as long as they're under 21. So you might have one filing here, and if you got 2 parents and 2 kids, well, then you're going to have 4 applications up here.
Oh, wow. Okay. Any other information you think that this is important and, the families who are applying, or you think that the families who have the capability of investing so much of fund, they should start immediately, or what are your suggestions? Seeing like in the this year, if we look at maybe it's too early, but then do you think the people are still applying for EB5 and they are taking that big risk, even though there is a risk involved, but still they are coming forward and investing in different businesses over here. So what's your, I would say, like, what's your observation, and also any case study if you can share, like, which is very common you see when they're filing EB5?
I mean, I think people are still coming forward. Again, as Rishi mentioned, this is a business opportunity, and there's always business opportunities to be had. So I think, as far as kind of some of the changes with immigration, people are still want to invest, the money, they still want to create business and be in the United States. So I don't think that the changes in immigration have really inhibited folks from, going about the investor.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, EB5s are good ideas. As long as you have the money, and as long as, especially if you're investing in a small business or something you're going to control, that you have a good business plan, that you've really thought about how is this business going to be profitable. I mean, we talked about earlier, what happens if the business, after a couple years doesn't need 10 people working there, and you haven't made the entire $1 million investment, or you're only employing 5 or 6 people. Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, now with the AI, you see, right? There's a lot of
right. Yeah,
employment
exactly.
is like gone for people, a lot of people, but still, yeah, I mean, it's helping the other way around in making the process faster in whatever they do.
Yeah.
But still, with the AI, I think there is not that much requirement of the real physical employees in the office.
And so you want to think about what kind of jobs require labor, right? If I have a landscaping business, well, you're not going to get a robot to go and cut somebody's grass. Well, at least not yet. Maybe you will. You're going to need a laborer to do that. If I have a farm, sounds crazy, but yeah, you can't. There's only so many things you can automate.
Right.
There's a restaurant. You can't automate a cook. You need somebody there who's actually going to cook your food. Now, to a certain point, do you need 10 people working in a restaurant on a full-time basis? That might be challenging. So you really want to think about what kind of business is going to be able to sustain 10 full-time workers, because it's a lot. And that's the one thing, is that $1 million is, look, I'd like to go home, there's $1 million sitting on my kitchen table, that'd be great. But a business will soak it up really fast. Right? When you think about payroll and you think about rent and insurance and all these other expenses, that money is going to move really quickly. So before you kind of get in the position of talking to Kelsey or talking to myself about, hey, I want to file for an EB5, the first thing we're going to ask you is, hey, do you have a business plan? Have you thought about, in year 1, what your expenses are going to be, what your revenue is going to be? How about year 3? How about year 5? Have you given those things some thought? Because you're going to need to make sure that this isn't about filing it in 2026. Because in 2028 or 2029, this business is teetering. You spent $1 million on something that, what did it get you? It might not have gotten you anything. It might have gotten you a 2-year green card, but great. For 2 years, then it's gone.
I mean, it's nothing to take lightly. It's, number one, it's a lot of money, and number two, like Rishi was saying, it takes a lot of thought. So it's not like you wake up one morning, you're like, I think I'll open a hospital in a rural city. You have to put in a lot of thought into it and planning.
Right. Let's talk about the local community, Raleigh-Durham Triangle area community.
Sure.
You see a lot of doctors, IT professionals, real estate people. So what do you, see, like, for local people, what's the Brown immigration can help with to apply for EB5? Because a lot of people are looking forward to, understand what exactly is EB5. Maybe they have their spouse in India or kids in India who are under 21, and they want to get them here and settle for all. So you see the local, how Brown immigration can help local community here.
So we have some contacts with people that run EB5 regional center investor programs that we can kind of route people towards. And the other thing that we try to do is just provide sound legal advice, right? Like, what we're not, I tell people all the time, we're not like investment financial representatives, right? Like, our job isn't going to be, hey, Sanjay, this is a good investment. That's Sanjay's responsibility to figure out what that is. Our job is to say, if you're going to make this investment, here are the things that you're going to need to give me if we're going to be successful, right? And, I tell clients all the time, we want to win Like
Right.
winning is really exciting. Getting somebody approved for an EB5 is really exciting because they're such big.
It's
Like
a life-changing moment for them.
Yeah,
It's
getting
a
some-
lot of efforts
yeah.
and a lot of wait period.
Yeah,
It is.
getting somebody a green
Eliminating
card,
it.
yeah, is
Yeah.
really exciting. It's really exciting to get somebody their citizenship. Like that's
Mhm.
really, really fun having that phone call of, hey, guess what I have in my hand? I have your green card. It showed up in the
Yeah.
mail, right? That's really fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a responsibility that we have of kind of leveling with people and saying, if you're going to invest in this, here's what I'm going to need. If you're not going to be able to get me that,
Mhm.
this is not a good idea,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I tell a client, I said probably half an hour ago, tell a client, my job is to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And sometimes you need to hear, this might not be a great idea.
Mhm.
And maybe you need to think about whether or not you want to put in that much money into something that we might not think is going to be successful.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up this podcast, do you have anything else to say to our listeners?
I mean, if you have a lot of, doctors and practitioners out there, I mean, that would make a great EB5. We're in like a drought with healthcare, and if they want to go and open up a medical facility,
Mhm.
in an area that is a medical desert, that's a great idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of health professional shortage areas in North
Mhm.
Carolina. There's a lot of medically underserved areas in North Carolina. So
Right.
you're kind of you're killing two birds with one stone insofar as you're able to kind of make an investment in something that's going to be able to get you to a green card quickly, which is
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you're able to deliver, to Kelsey's point, like health services to an underserved area. Or there's a lot of food deserts, like a grocery
Right.
store. Grocery stores are great for EB5s because they require a lot of labor. It doesn't have to necessarily be really, really expensive labor. And you do a wonderful thing in terms of being able to give people food so they're not buying their groceries at like a CVS or a gas station.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of places like that that are just, they don't have access to grocery stores and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities. The nice thing about an EB5 is that the government doesn't care what kind of business you have. They're
Yeah.
willing to be kind of flexible. So there's a lot of investment opportunity out there. And it's a matter of, having the gumption to go out there and try it.
And creativity.
Yeah, right, creativity.
Well, thank you so much, Rishi and Kelsey, being
Sure.
on the show and giving us information on more practical thinking about EB5 risk timelines and other stuff. We'll come up again with the next podcast series with new visa type. For till then, thank you so much. This is your host Vaishnavi.
Thanks.